So we are ready to start the next session. And so in the previous session, we talked about hybrid parenting. So while the vertical relationship between parent and child among different generations is an interesting phenomena, coming together of families in different cultures through marriage is also complex, yet important to understand and consider. So for our next topic, we have Dr. Dilip Aminji, who is going to be talking on interfaith marriages. And so here is the brief bio. Dilip Aminji is the director of Peninsula Multi-Faith Coalition of the San Francisco Bay Area. He is a certified speaker of Islamic Network Group and a Dharma ambassador of Hindu American Foundation. He has co-authored the book Hindu Vivaha Samskara. He founded the web forum interfaithshadi.org and has guided over 1,200 youth and summarized his experiences in the book Interfaith Marriage, Share and Respect with Equality. He's also the founder of hinduspeakers.org. So, without any delay, let me hand it over to Dilip ji. Namaste, Dilip ji. Thank you so much for graciously accepting this invitation to come and educate all of us on interfaith marriages. Please go ahead. Over to you.
You are a scholar on Hinduism. So that should give you a lot of pride and happiness about it. But you will get even more happier when you go and see that you are applying your knowledge someplace. And that is what today is more about, application of your what knowledge you have. The next point is, you know about Hinduism, but when you understand the other faiths and compare to them, then you will even value more what your knowledge is, and that will make you complete. So again, here we will be learning about other faiths, the concept of God and how they work on it. And the third important point is this 1 hour course will prepare you in variety of life situations which you never even expected, and you will thrown into it. And I predict that in such a long your life, at least you will get into at least 10 interfaith marriage related issues, situations where somebody will reach out or is part of your life, and you will have to end up sharing and guiding the people. So now you are, think it like you are an expert, you are an advisor, and how you will act in particular situations. I give the assignment to you fellows, and it's interesting that you gave really great answer, and that's what exactly I was going to tell. One of the persons said that that article Aditi I shared, and those who have not read it, please read it again. She's summarizing like it's a hurt feeling, betrayal, revelations, but she's sharing her personal feeling that, but happy that but she feels that interfaith marriage is possible. Right on the dot. That's exactly what I believe. Second thing is she's sharing that should not ask for other person to convert. Actually, that's my bottom line message. If you want to marry whoever marry, why you make this religious conversion as a prerequisite? And that's practice should end now. That's my ultimate bottom message. Further, someone is saying that if you want to follow those traditions, why you should have stayed back in your own country? Unfortunately, you bring the same thing even this country. The other great point about parenting, that the girl Aditi felt that her parent won't understand, and that's why she never shared. As a matter of fact, even today, her parents not aware that she was in relation with a Muslim guy for 4 years. Exactly, that's what will happen in your case. I have seen invariably that Hindu youth thinks that Hindu parents are racist, fanatic, they won't understand what they are going through. Unfortunately, that's the truth. Further, someone says that parents are only worried about educations and vacations. Instead of that, you should be preparing them, instead of preparing them for college and jobs and money, she's saying, and very truly, that we should prepare our children for life. And the other point is in the beginning, everything looks good, but as time goes by, and many times I would say actually problem starts 10 years down the road. So how do you know it? And that's what we will look into it today. Now, you may wonder why you need to know about interfaith marriages. Next slide. I ran a marriage survey and found that 38% of our youths marry to Christian, Jews, or Muslim in America. I also ran a marriage survey for Muslims with Sefak Mayak, a Muslim girl, and found that 45% of Muslims also marry outside their faith. But one major difference, I have guided some 1,200 youths around the world, and I have observed that majority, I don't have the exact number, but probably 95% of cases, the Hindu has no problem merging, accepting something from other faiths. But Muslims, 95% or more cases, will want the other party to convert to Islam and completely follow the Islamic faith, especially in raising children. So I said about why interfaith marriages are important. Now, how you will consult somebody? So first of all, you are not going to decide for them what is right for them, because that's going to be so showstopper. But you're going to spend all your time in understand, being a good listener. You cannot criticize others or their faith or practices, because that will end right there. Instead of that, what I'm presenting is we should say about equality. And that's a really great selling point. In that terms that we say, well, we are sharing the American value in the sense of freedom, liberty, equality, and justice. And that's the title of my book, Share and Respect with Equality. If you present it this way, it will work really like a charm. And I will show you why. So first you wonder that why Hindu fall in love with an Abrahamic anyway, because even though you gave such a great knowledge and you send them to college, the problem is the situation. This is the way it goes. And again, as a consultant, you have to understand what may have gone through. So it is very important for you to know. So we taught them, you are pluralist, secular, Iswar Allah Tero Naam. Great. There is one God. So why to fight? Very true. Sometimes the other party play a sympathy game that, we are Jewish, we were Holocaust. Oh, Hindu feels really bad. We are Muslim. This Donald Trump is after us. And again, Hindu feels really for them. So there is a sympathy game there. And then sometime the other party spend tons of money and they give 10 times more love, and the kind of love, that's exactly what Hindu party was looking for, which they did not get it from so many dating within faith marriage. So naturally they fall for the love. Then the whole love relation goes to the second gear, and then discussion goes on. Who is God? And invariably Hindu cannot explain who is God in 1 minute. And then they say, why don't you explore your own God? So they go to temple, see some auntie pouring milk on Shivlinga, what she's doing. The answer auntie gives to this, that's not what he or she was looking for. And they get frustrated. And then ultimately, it goes in the final gear. And that is the Abrahamic party will come and tell Hindu party that, well, we've been in relation 3 to 10 years. It's not me, it's my mother, whatever. Convert. If you don't do it, that's end of relationship. So that's the way it progresses. Now, we will come back why Hindus have problem explaining who is God later on. Now, what do Hindu thinks in this kind of situation? That I believe in so many God, and actually I'm a pluralist. So I believe even Allah, Jesus, all of them, I'm very open-minded. Wonderful. So, but what they don't realize, the other party is not asking you to add one God, but asking to remove all the other God. And there is only one God, and that is my God. That's ultimate supremacist ideology. And to be in romantic relationships for 3 to 10 years and then asking at last second for conversion, it's an ugly form of love proselytizations, and that's injustice to the victim party. That's what I'm saying it. So now you may wonder why Abrahamic asked for conversions. I mean, Hindu don't, Jewish, these Buddhists and Jains and Sikhs, and they don't ask. Why only Abrahamic? For that, you will have to have Abrahamic 101. So let's take this knowledge, learning about Abrahamic faith. You know, there was nothing, 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 and God created the world in 7 days. As you can see, on that 6th day, God put on a variety of animals, birds, and all that. And then God put on Adam. And later on, the story moves further. And that is, so in this scenario, the Darwin laws of evolution has no place. So further, the story goes on. There was an Adam and Eve, and they ate the apple, and that's why they carry this original sin. Now, original sin is so vital, especially in Christianity. It's unbelievable. And then the story goes further that this is a Noah's Ark, and Abrahamic has many apostles. And you may start that everything starts with father, being a father of 3 religions is Abraham. That's some 4,000 years before. Jewish people believe the Abrahamic Isaac, Jacob, Moses, who gave the 10 commandments, who heard the 10 commandments, David, Solomon, they are all their apostles. And the same Christians and Muslims also believe all of them are apostles. Jesus was a Jew. He was a reformer, and he did not like certain Jewish practices, and he started making reforms in then Jewish practices. So naturally, he created a lot of trouble, and that's why on that ground, he was hanged to death. Some 320 years after Jesus' birth, 325 year in Nicene Creed, they work on it, put all the stories together and made the Bible. So, I mean, if you think of it, Christianity, it's not a Jesus, it's some 320 years on. That's where the Bible came to shape. So 300 years more later, after that Nicene Creed, Muhammad came in picture. And at that time, Christianity was spreading all over very rampantly. And Muhammad says, wait, how come you are saying Jesus as a son of God? That's what Bible said. And they changed the name of God from Lord God to now Father God. Muhammad had a problem with that because original Abrahamic teaching is a God is a Nirankari. There is no shape, like God cannot have a shape. If God cannot have a shape, all of a sudden, how can God have a humanly form? Jesus. So Muhammad said that this Jesus as a son of God is a monstrous falsehood. And further Bible in Allah told Muhammad that don't make friends with Jews and Christians. And God's name again changed to Allah. The point between these 3 religions, even though they believe in the same scriptures and apostles and all that, they don't agree to each other's version of God or certain belief systems, and they cannot put up with each other, especially in interfaith marriages. No way. So if they cannot with their own brothers, forget about Hindus. So if you wonder that where did this exclusivist, intolerant teaching came from, I say it came from the 10 Commandments. That's the second of 10 Commandments reads this way. Now you are Hindu, so think it with a Hindu mind. But this is the Exodus 20.4 and 5. It reads, I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other God before me. You shall not make yourself an idol. You says, wait, we have many murtis. whether in the form of anything that is in heaven above or on the earth beneath, and that is in the water under the water or under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. Hindu says, wait, I don't have problem bowing down to anything and everything. Further, the God says, I am a jealous God. Now keep in mind, this is not a typo. I counted in Bible, it said jealous God 31 times, angry God 238 times, and fear God is used 450 times. So it's really God means the business. And to make a point, God is saying that if you don't follow me, I will punish your children up to 3 generations, 3 to 4 generations who are innocent children. They have nothing to do with their great grandparents did it, but God will punish them. So I mean, God meant business here. So let's look at the exclusivity in Christianity, that Jesus is the Son of God, and faith in Jesus is only way to achieve salvation. Jesus himself said, I am the way, truth, and the life, and no one comes to Father, meaning the God, except through me. So meaning you got to be baptized and become a Jesus believer, follower, and then only you can go to heaven. And non-baptized, anybody who is non-baptized, including Mahatma Gandhi, I mean, many Christians may believe that way, he's still carrying that original sin. So, okay, now, so that sin word is very vital for certain church believer, church goer Christians. Now, other thing, important thing is the churches are so powerful, and along with these rabbis have so much control and imams have so much control over Muslims. To give you example, let me take this Maya's example. She came on my website and she's telling me that she's in love relations with this Christian boy. We were wonderful. We love each other. No issue with religions between two, no problem. But a Christian boy asked that, my parents says I want to have a wedding in church. Is it okay? So Hindu girl says, no problem. I love to wear that beautiful white dress and throw that bouquet. Wow, she was excited. Further, that girl came back and says that now this church is asking to write a prenuptial agreement that the children will be raised only in the Christian faith and baptized. And that's where she got alarmed and she reached out to me. She says, wait, what should I do? I mean, why? This is not part of the agreement between two of us. And why church is making these calls? So I really pumped her up. I said, forget it. There is nothing you have to gain. Say no. So she said, no, I will not sign these things. So finally, the church is keeping the Maya, and they are telling the in-laws, the Christian in-laws, that if Maya does not sign this agreement, then they will punish the Christian in-laws. They will take away the communion holy rites. And they have a burial site. When they die, they want to go with Jesus and happily. And they're going to take away that burial site rites. So, I mean, think of it. It's here, there is some 22 years old girl, and she's in so much pressure here because she just don't want to sign one document. And that's why even Christian in-laws cannot go in peace when they are. So there is tremendous pressure being put on the Hindu side. And finally, in most cases, they just gave in, signed that document, let's get it over. And that's what I'm trying to say, that this Hindu or all interfaith couples should have rights to decide what is right for them, and not these religious institutes. There should be a freedom from religious institutes. Now let's look. You may wonder that I keep on criticizing all faiths and all that. Actually, I'm just doing it to help you understand the potential issues. As a matter of fact, I have found 70% of Christians Hindus have married, they are really wonderful people. And to make a point, I was at one of the temple, and this cop, he says, Kemcho. I say, when did you learn Gujarati? And he says, then he came to temple and saw everything. And he says, my wife is Gujarati. And he says he was so excited to come and see. And he says he will bring his children to this mandir and maybe to Balvihar also. See, point I'm trying to make is we don't have any problem with whatever faith he's following. We don't even need to ask him. As far as they just respect who we are, that's only we are asking for. So I hope I'm not asking too much here. That's only message I'm here to convey. Now, Quran. What Quran says about non-Muslim. Now, to make a point, let's look over, that's on my book, page 283. And Quran says on and on these things. Those who deny our revelations, meaning what is written in the Quran, we will burn them to fire. On no sooner your skin get consumed, God will give a new skin. Not out of mercy, but they can pour the hot oil on you again and it get burned again. So you get pain twice, not once. I mean, that's really serious message. Further, Quran clearly says, Quran 491 says, lay hold them, meaning unbelievers, and kill them whenever you find them. Not only them, I mean, God could have done it, but God is giving absolute authority to individual Muslims. We give you an absolute authority. Now, I'm sorry, this is just a cut and paste here. It's possible it may mean something to Muslims, but I'm just telling you, this is what I read it and looks pretty serious to me. Now on Quran on interfaith marriages. As of yesterday, if you did not, please read this article in New York Times by Myra Faruqi. And the link I have provided, and it says, I tried out and filtered him out. Really beautiful article. The story is, there is a Pakistani girl in love with a Hindu boy in San Francisco. And you know, San Francisco, most progressive city of the world probably. So very open-minded people generally. She was in romantic love relationship with this boy for almost 9 months or something like that. And then on her 5th day and 9 months later, she says, you know, buddy, you understand that only way forward is you have to convert to Islam. What this Muslim girl was meaning to say, that Hindu was supposed to know Quran 221. What Quran 221 says, you shall not wed pagan woman, pagan meaning idol worshippers, non-believers, unless they embrace the faith, convert to Islam. A believing slave girl is better than idolatrous, maybe that means Hindus, though she may please you. So a Hindu status is less than a slave girl. Further, Quran says, Quran 6:11, that if you somehow got married, do not maintain your marriage with that unbelieving woman. Even other party must convert to Islam even though you are married. And if not, this is called zina. And that is one of the most worst sin you can think of in Islam. So according to Islamic, these 2 points, she cannot marry to this boy, and that's why she's saying on the 5th day that don't marry. See, I respect her that yes, she has to follow her Islam, and that's her rights and prerogative. What problem I have is she a true Muslim? Then why she was in love relationship for 9 months? She kissed the guy as per in the article. She danced with that guy. She drank. The Muslims not supposed to do it. And that girl Faruqi had several prior romantic relationships too, which is absolutely forbidden. in Islam, especially women cannot date even Christians, Jews, or Hindus. And actually, she has a full knowledge about Islam. She's writing that aware of the prohibition on marrying outside my faith and culture. So if she was fully knowledgeable, why she's ignoring Quran 24:30? That is, Quran says that you have to supposed to lower your gaze, believing men to turn away their eyes from temptation and restrain their carnal desires. So if she's ignoring Quran 24:30, but says that Quran 2:21 is more important, you have all right to question her. Are you a love jihadi or what? So let's switch gears to Judaism. Jews believe they are a chosen people. Jesus, as a son of a God, they cannot endorse it because they are still looking for Messiah, and Jesus is not that Messiah. They will not believe in the Muhammad's Allah ideology, and Hindu Murti worship. Probably, absolutely, that's intolerable for Jews. Further, in Jews, the child will have a circumcision on their 8th day, and if that's not happen, they will be very nervous. Something negative will happen to the child. So they will want the breast circumcision as soon as possible. So that's their belief. Now, I met this Jew when I was traveling Mount Rushmore, and this couple, Hindu girl and some Westerner guy, and within 5 minutes of my discussion, that guy says, and he happened to be Jewish guy, he says, ours is not an interfaith marriage. I said, this Desi girl, a Jewish guy, can you explain me, what do you mean? She says, this girl has come to our church, the synagogue, for 2 years, understood the Torah and all our teaching, and willingly she has converted to Judaism. So ours was Jew marriage. I said, who are you kidding? If she met a Jewish, Christian guy or a Muslim or a Buddhist, she would have converted to that particular faith or following that faith. Don't think that she feels that Hinduism is inferior versus Judaism is superior. And that girl, Hindu girl, was standing, listening, with a stone face. What she can say? See, that's the important point, that sometimes you do this fake conversion and you pay the price for it. Now, let's go back to why Hindu cannot articulate who the God is. And that is, as Rajiv Malhotra ji is describing in her book, Indranet, he's comparing Hinduism to vast forest, like Amazon forest, to American farm. Again, very productive, lot of crops, very efficient. So that definition, when it's religion, it has to have a founder, versus Hinduism's no founder. There has to be a clear beginning, the genesis, the world was created in 7 days, and the end, that is the judgment day, where everything will be again put back to vacuum. Hinduism has nothing like that. You have to have a clear rule, like the 10 commandments. Then we have a guidance, but nothing clear, judgmental, yes and no kind of answers. You have to have a clear hierarchy, like God, Jesus, church, priest, and then you. Clear hierarchy. Versus Hinduism's, my relation to God is me and God directly. There is no middleman. Their messages are clear and concise. It's a binomial. That is, you are with us, not with us. There is not confusion, much confusion there. Versus Hinduism, there are so many things you can question on it and make your own decisions. And the worst of all is the last point. Because it's a binomial, anybody who is not with us is your enemy. A corn in a wheat farm is a wheat, and wheat in a corn farm is a wheat. And dandelion, the Hindus are weed anyway, for sure. Now, what can we do about expectations of religious conversion? Now you're an expert. You are here to help out some Hindu youths in particular situations. So what can you do? Now, ideally, what should be doing is from childbirth to you should be doing so many things, and which I have covered in other presentations, which I will ask you to do, look it over, and will not cover in interest of time. But let's focus on the day. The day Hindu parents hear that, Mom, I'm in love with Muhammad, Dad, I'm in love with Jennifer. And Hindu parents completely freak out. Normal Hindu parents may have already said, I told you, don't marry interfaith. Or, Muslims, Christians, oh no, they are bad, something. So they completely lose trust of Hindu boy. They knew exactly what you're going to say, and now you say it, that deal. And maybe at that time, the parents may reach out to you, this is a situation, what should we do? And now here you are supposed to tell them or try to salvage, or you think that Hindu boy you had a good personal relations, and you may go to Starbucks coffee and talk them out and see, what are you going to say? So I would say that I'd be really realistic. Collect a lot of facts. Listen to that person that, come on, tell me everything. Also tell the parents to go visit their mosque, go meet all relatives. Put on the biggest bindi you could think of, put on the nice sari, and let's go to the mosque. And then your daughter says, yeah, let's go. And you are going. What will happen in mosque? As soon as you enter at the mosque door, the imam will say, ladies, go in the back door. Only men are allowed in the main part of the imam, in this mosque. So right away, Hindu girl will say, wait, what's going on? In our mandir, we sit next to each other. Still, you don't say anything. Keep your mouth shut. Don't say that, oh, look, see, I told you so. No, nothing. Just let her realize and give her time to breathe in and find out the facts. And then in the end, what you do, and if you follow this one, you'll be successful. If you try any other smart tricks or try to rush up things, you will fail. What you do is you just tell them that, why don't you share two faiths? What I mean is bring them to our mandir. Every Saturday we have a nice program. They are more Muslims. Let's go to their mosque every Friday, or Christian. Let's go to their church every Sunday. We'll go. So let's share each other's faith. Let's have a Christmas and Eid and Diwali. Let's celebrate all. So your son or daughter will say, yeah, sure, makes sense. Let's truly respect each other. And let's have equality, 50-50. We don't want 49%. We will not settle for 49%, nor we will ask for 51%. So naturally, your son says, yeah, I want equality. See, equality is a selling point. Everybody likes equality. So, and then you propose, no BBS. That's a term I made up. What is BBS? BBS is a religious labeling in Abrahamic. As I said, that there is only two ways. One way, you are with us, not with us. So how can you make it? Bris, that's for Judaism. On 8th day, you have a bris, and then bar mitzvah and bar mitzvah at the age of 11, 13. For Christians, it's baptism or shahadat, la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. That's in Islam. It takes only 2 minutes to convert to Islam. Simple, nothing to do. To make a story short, somehow convince that what is this religious labeling has to do with it. Keep the BBS out. If you can convince them to keep the BBS out, you win the game, especially while raising the children. No labeling on children. That's the selling point. And if you present it this way, Hindus will buy into it, and they say, uncle, you make sense. Auntie, you are pretty reasonable. Now, also sell that, why you want to pay make your children, child is just born. Why you want to put a label right now? Why don't you teach from both faiths? And when the child is adult, let them make whatever decision, whatever faith. Isn't it make sense? Uh, okay. So use this argument with whoever you are talking to. That, Barack Obama, his father was Muslim, mother was Christian. He was both or nothing, and he's definitely smart man and not confused person. And as an adult, he make his own decision to be a Christian. Isn't it wonderful? See, that's my selling point. And when you tell it this way, that the child born interfaith child should have the liberty to pick his or her own faith as an adult. You're not supposed to put putting the label at a very early age when child doesn't know what he or she doing. That's not fair. See, if you share it this way, it will sit in their mind and they will buy into it. Now, so bottom line, remember, no BBS. That's the bottom line. Now, problem is there are no marriages same. To make a point, I'm taking Jewish and Christian marriages. So we are non-biased. We are some outsiders there. So Chelsea Clinton married to a Jewish guy. She's still Christian Methodist, and they have a wonderful, happy married life. So 100% in line with my messages, equality and respect for each other. Ivanka Trump converted to Judaism and happily married. So, I mean, should not complain about it. But I'm just wondering that why she converted to Judaism. Did she thought that Judaism is a superior religion over Christianity? Or maybe Donald Trump thought that there's some kind of bargain deal there. I mean, he was, you never know. So I'm not sure what was the deal Ivanka Trump was looking for in converting. But the worst scenario is this one. And this is a typical Hindu boy, Joseph. He was in love relationship with Rebecca. Joseph Christian, Rebecca a Jewish person. Rebecca says, I'm a Jewish, you must convert to Judaism. Joseph said, Rebecca, I love you, no problem. Then Rebecca put the plug, pushed another button. Children should be Jewish only. Joseph says, Rebecca, I love you, no problem. Children, now they got married, they had a daughter, and daughter was being raised in Judaism. And then this Joseph says, wait, what's going on? How about me? I'm a Christian. So to make a point, what he did, this Jewish daughter, he took it to church live with TV camera people and baptized the daughter. So that becomes a major media sensation because according to Jews and Christian beliefs, a dual labeling on a child, baptism and priest. That's no. Absolutely no. You cannot have two labels on one child. That becomes a court battle. Point being, why Joseph fake converted? And that's what most of the Hindu boys or girls, when they fake convert, they don't have a true faith in the other faith. So my message is, please don't fake convert. Let's say you are in a scenario where the Hindu girl already converted, start wearing hijab, and then in a Brahmin home, let's say, and performing namaz 5 days, what should we do? Again, I will ask you to read it over some of the other presentations. I will skip in interest of time. There are a lot of things Mandir and community can do. So with that, what are the take-home messages? And so you are a consultant. You have to first understand the individuals who is in love relationships. their situations, how many years you've been in love relationship, how it started, what was the understanding in during period. So you keep on asking very poking questions for several meetings, just keep on listening. And then finding out that is the other party is exclusivist or is it really open-minded. If the other party is really open-minded, I don't see any problem. Just bless them. Convince the parents that nope, it's a good in their interest, let them get married. But if they are exclusivists, and especially using this BBS marker, if the party says, yes, you need a BBS marker, then probably you want to convince them out of it. And tell the Hindu party, or including if the other party is also there when you're consulting, tell them what is the need faking some religious conversion. Keep the religious institute out. You know, marrying in Christian church or same for Muslims and Jews, it costs something like not marrying, but be part of that religious institute. It costs 3 to 12% of your gross income you have to pay every month. Do you realize it? Do you understand it? Instead of that, why don't you be a true pluralist, respect each other's faith, equality, 50-50, and also raise children in two faiths. See, if they agree those last 3 points, I would say without any hesitation, convince the parents that let them go get married. The other party is really open-minded and nice, should not have major problem. But if not, it's definitely a red flag. We should end it here. So again, my message is of equality. I hope nobody should have any problem. I have not come across anybody so far who has said that my message is irrational, illogical, or Hindu specific message. That's what I have covered all in my book, Share and Respect with Equality. What I'm most proud about the last page of the book, where Pastor Kani and my Jewish, this Hannah Khan, this Richard Hammond, who is a Jewish Hindu Sikhs, they really, really admire the book. So that's my message.
Okay. Whatever you said so far, I'm in agreement. I really love what you presented here. My question is, if somebody's in love and this is pressure coming from both parents, how, if none of the parents wants to budge, or both parents has to actually be in agreement for a person to be able to be married, and one side of parents or both side of parents being too difficult, what kids supposed to do?
What kids supposed to do? That's what you're asking, what the child is supposed to do?
Yeah, what kids supposed to do, because they are in love. And yeah.
I always tell the children that definitely do exactly what you want. Forget about parents, ignore them, marry. Provided, understand that this is a major, you are going against parents. You are taking so much risk. You are getting into completely unknown territory. Make sure you make fully informed decision. And take your time, take 2 or 3 years, don't rush up. Remind them the divorce rates are, what is that, 50%, 70%, 80% divorce rates. Realize all those things. I'm not trying to scare you.
Right.
Tell them, child, that I'm not trying to scare you, but take your time, 2-3 years. Everything what we talk about, that's what you have to, that's your consultant's job is. Make them think of several points which they have not thought about it, and that will be a win-win for all.
Yeah.
But to your questions, absolutely ignore parents, I say. Okay. Parents will be there for 10 or 15 years, but the party has to live for next 70 years or whatever years. But if you put the responsibility on child's shoulder and make them aware, I bet they're going to make a right decision. And parents will ultimately come back to terms.
You are right about that. This is my experience. Leave the parents alone and eventually they come back.
But at the same token, it is very vital to make fully informed decision.
Of course.
Otherwise, you can really get burned.
Of course.
You can really get burned. Next, please.
Yeah, I was asking Dr. Dilipji that your proposal, your suggestion of equality, 50%, 50%, is it accepted by all religions, by all the religions.
Are you kidding? Are you kidding? No way. They want 100%. That's part of their religion's teachings. Absolutely no way. It has to be 100%, 0%. But that's their problem. We are talking to Hindu parents and Hindu children. And you go tell any other highly educated or not even educated child, Hindu parent, and tell them about equality. This is, yeah, I want equality. I mean, who don't want equality? They're not going to say, oh, no, I want to be. So your job is to only convince the Hindu side.
Right.
And if the other party don't buy it, then you say, well, the other party does not believe in equality. So are you okay to be submissive and follow? Then it's your choice. It's their decision.
Yeah, that means you are politically restricting the marriages then.
Whatever I am telling you is because I have consulted 1,200 youths, and on and on and on. I know what trick work. The trick is don't give them a heavy dose. Keep on telling one piece at a time, and every time ask a poking question. You don't ever express your view. I think, forget it. You just keep on asking them poking questions and lead them to that direction, and they will make right decision. Trust them.
I think your thought is response and not react, and let them think logically. And I do want to say one thing, that all Hindu, we want to raise our children, because we have a amazing value system, and we all believe that's why we are here. And I think from childhood, we have a responsibility to have them understand Hinduism thoroughly. So when they grow up and exploring other places, they can compare. Because without having original message, how can you compare to? Like my daughter, because of 25 years of Hinduism, I taught, I make sure that she get exposed to. When she wanted to go to Christian camp, I said, yeah, go, because I gave you everything and you need to know. She came back and told me why our Hinduism is better.
Yeah, that's a great thing. I always tell, empower your child.
Exactly.
Right. Empower
Yeah.
them. So if you tell them that, look, you want to marry, no problem.
No problem.
I don't have a problem. Yeah. I just want to make sure that you don't come back crying, have you thought about this thing? Have you thought of this thing? Have you thought of this? Right. Read my book, and it will give you a lot of talking points. Simple. Let them make decisions.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Next.
Thank you, Dilip. It was really informative. I enjoyed each and every part of it.
Oh, good.
I wanted to thank you. Yeah.
What did you learn new here?
Oh, I was like, interfaith is like, we heard about it, but definitely it's always in the mind. Now we are like going into the generation, we are in 21st century, we should not stop anybody. But at the same time, behind the scenes, you really don't want to go for it. And you don't know the reasons why, but now I really know what makes it, what are the inhibitions, and those are genuine. Those are not like we have created them, and they still hold true in today's world also. So that's what I have learned. And yes,
the problem is
from the person. I'm sorry, go ahead, Dilipji.
Problem is when you have a little 10, 12 years old, 15 years old child or 20 years old child. At home, we keep on saying so much against interfaith marriage, so many against the other faith people and all that. And they don't tell you. But in their mind, they know that you are racist, you are intolerant, and that's why that Aditi example which I shared, she never talked to her parents, even though she was in love relation for 4 years, because she knows that parents won't understand. So instead of that, stop complaining about others, but just educate them. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I've been doing this mistake. Now I got it. They say it, you're racist. I hear that all the time, but now I'll rather educate them. Yeah, that's the right thing. Thank you so much.
Dilipji, so it was a very good presentation. I actually have an experience with my family. So my sister-in-law's son, he got actually married to a Muslim girl. So the whole story reflected actually when as you are saying. So when they both liked each other, they came to the parents, and at that time, this is a while ago, about maybe I would say 20 years ago. So they fell in love, but the thing, like you said, is like we are Hindus and they're Muslim, and it was a secret wedding. Hindu wedding was a secret wedding. No parents showed up, only the girl came. And we felt very odd about that. And then when it is their wedding, we all had to attend, and they actually changed his name also during the wedding. We were all like, not happy, but what can we do, right? So we went down, but like what you suggested, like before they got married, if we have done all these things, it would actually at the end, like a few years ago, they were divorced actually now. So with the kids and everything, they're really struggling. What you said makes sense, like expose them to both cultures. All the families need to be involved, just not the boy and the girl. So if they all involved, maybe at that time it wouldn't have been happened. Right now, everybody is struggling. All the families are struggling. The kids are struggling a lot between the cultures, and sharing time between mom and dad. As a Indian, we feel we don't have those. Those are not normal for us. So it's yeah.
Now, on your point, remember that even that Hindu boy may have been circumcised before marriage.
Oh yeah. We don't know. We don't know. I mean, yeah.
It's possible. The other
Yeah.
thing is now there is a child custody battle.
Yeah.
Now remember that the children are Muslim children, because husband was Muslim, wife was Muslim, children are Muslim. And if Hindu, now this boy claims to be a Hindu, judge will not give him child custody, because you may, in your home, you may have a Ganesh statue and all that. Judge will make sure that you remove everything out of room, because now these Muslim children cannot get exposed to any. It's a serious legal issue.
It is.
The other point is, okay, he was Hindu, he was Muslim. Now he may be acting like Hindu, but let's say he dies today. His dead body is sitting in front of Hindu parents' home, and they are ready to give final burial sites, and everybody crying and all that. The girl can go to court or imam and tell that, stop, this is the Muslim party who died, and the body has to be put in the grave, unless
really?
he put it in his will that he's no more a Hindu, no more a Muslim, and I want the final burial this way. So what I highly recommend that get it notarized, that or go to mandir, have a formal prayer, a puja, that now I'm converting to some kind of legal agreement, legal thing, that now I'm a Hindu.
Oh.
Otherwise, if he dies, he will go with Muhammad. If that's, I don't know what is his wish, whether he wants to see Krishna or Muhammad.
Yeah.
So tell him he's not out.
Yeah, I will mention it.
Dilip ji, I have a question.
Make it short.
Yeah, very short.
Yep.
Do we have any activists in things going on against this no conversion? Because I like that idea. There should be no conversion. There should be just marriage, and they can decide. Is there any activity going against that?
Yeah.
That's what my book, I've been talking everywhere. I have almost 100 presentations, and please, let's start it.
Yeah, I would like to.
This religious conversion for marriage practice is absolutely wrong. It does not fit in today's world.
Right.
It is absolutely irrational thinking.
Very, very.
As you saw in New York Times yesterday article, 100% that's what's going on. And New York Times published it and trying to show that, look, this girl is such a nice Muslim girl. I mean, still it's going on.
Yeah. No, this has a ground here. This is the country we believe in right of individual. I think this is a very important point here. You just made me realize that there should be
in that New York Times article, the girl is expecting the Hindu boy to understand Quran 221. We taught our children Quran 221, and she assumes, because she's from Pakistan, she assumes that Hindus should know the rules of the dating rule.
Yeah.
See, that's a problem.
Right. It
But the
is.
problem is not with Muslim, problem is not
No.
with Christians, problem is not with Jews, problem is with Hindus.
Right. Yeah. No, I have no. I don't. I'm
We
not
are
against.
naive.
I'm not against of anybody's belief. I'm against. I fought for human right. Yeah. So two people lost, they should be able to take care of themselves. Yeah.
Priya, go ahead, please.
Hi. Hi, Aminji, Dilipji. Assuming that that both girl and boy agree to no conversion, and they are bringing up a child, and they are exposing to both religion, and if a child tend to pick one religion
Mhm.
over the other,
Right.
probably the parent who is stronger in religious belief, probably the child is going to pick that religion. In that case, both the party, both girl and boy, should have the maturity to let the child follow what he or she believes in.
Great question. The problem invariably I have seen that, let's say the Christian girl, Hindu boy is so busy making tons of money and parties and all that. He does not have time to sit down with the child and give them the religious education. Versus Christian girl, probably, let's say, staying home or working, whatever, she's going to
You
church
could
every
say go
Sunday.
for the Hindu girl. If the girl is Hindu and she is stronger in religious values,
Oh,
then
then
the child is grow. It depends on what the girls are going to do,
More
because
like
they are the
Yeah.
main caretaker of the kids, right? So
Main
it's always going
influencer.
to be what the girls believe in is what is going to happen with the kids.
When I met Swami Dayanand Saraswati ji, he's no more now, in 2008. And at that time I was new and I presented these things. You know, this has no meaning, he says. Take it away. Has no meaning, he says. I was a little upset. And I said, Swamiji, can you explain? And he told so beautifully. He says, from your child is 2 years old, do Aarti, Puja, every day before eating, you do the prayer. And if you have installed strong value, let them baptize, let them do whatever. Nothing will change it. The Hindu party, its foundation is so strong, nobody can rock it. Actually, it's so true message, except these legal points I'm trying to raise. So
Yeah.
point is, yes, from the child is actually, as from the child birth, one should start working on it. And if you work on it, you don't have to worry who they marry to
Mhm.
or whether they get baptized, and let them get baptized. Yeah, I know personally friends, very close friends, children, daughters, children, they are baptized. So what? Oh, they are more Hindu than those children are more Hindu than any other Hindu. So point is, if you install, doesn't matter what label you put it on. But I'm putting the BBS label as a consultant. That's a talking point, because it tells you what that person will turn out 10 years down the road. Yeah, and if the party agree that no BBS, first of all, legal points, you are clearing that you are not getting into legal trouble. And second thing, that you find it out what that party is 10 years down the road. So it's just a selling point. Yes, agree exactly what you're saying. If from childhood, if you install good value, you don't have to worry nothing.
Dilipji, there is a question in the chat. They're asking, where can we get hold of your book? Actually, is it available on Amazon or something?
Yes, Amazon.com.
Okay. And yeah, it was like everybody said, it was very enlightening and informative talk. And we are so fortunate to learn from your experience and expertise. And for those of you who don't know, there are a couple of videos, very interesting videos by Dr. Amin on parenting and marriage relationships and all. Wonderful. I just loved it so much. So please go and listen to them. Yeah. And so from that, I came to know that Dilip ji is not only a very good speaker, but he's also a wonderful husband and a wonderful father also. So yes.
Wait. Clarification. I have a boy, 35 and 39 years old, not married. I don't know who they will marry to. I have no control over what they will do it. And if they have not read my book even. So do I have, it's one, in my early working, my wife was saying, you know, what if your boys, both of boys married to Muslim, people will throw stone at you, you know? I says, I can only worry about, I mean, I'm just sharing my knowledge. I'm not claiming what my boys or girls will do it. And happy marriage, that's something you have to ask my wife, not me.
And if the good values are already they are raised with the good values, so no, nothing to worry.
Absolutely.
Actually,
You know,
actually, in raising children, I started working in 2006, meaning my boys were already in middle school and all that. So I have done all those mistakes that they know I'm a sort of racist and biased and anti-Muslims and this and that. But it's only when I start working on it and getting feedback from 1,200 youths, at that time I realized that no, I'm on a wrong path. I should not be complaining about anybody, and I should be just saying, putting all the facts. If I did all those facts, if I knew what I knew today, I would have raised, my children would have read my book.
well,
But
can
still
I
we
make
are-
a one?
Yeah, go
Excuse
ahead.
me, I'm sorry.
Go
Can I
ahead.
make a one comment? If you're Hindu, you cannot be anti anything, okay? That's my belief. Because I don't think as a Hindu, we are anti-Muslim or anti-anything. We
Yeah.
just don't want this conversion process because we don't want anybody coming to our community. We don't want them to convert. Why should we do our children to
Right.
convert?
Right.
I think if I'm Hindu, if I'm true Hindu, I'm never against any religion. I welcome all religion. That's
Okay,
what
now,
I think.
if you are, let's say I'm asking that you are the consultant.
Mhm.
Don't say that we don't want this conversion. We don't want this conversion. Has no point in conversion.
Right,
Because
right.
that's oversold world.
Exactly.
Instead of that, you just say that we want equality.
Yes.
Of course,
That's
yeah.
it.
I mean,
And as soon
Yeah.
as you start saying conversions, this is there,
no.
auntie, there you go.
no, conversion is the activist way I'm talking about it.
Correct.
When I was raising my children, both my girls was telling me, Mom, what if we marry outside of our religion or outside of our community? My answer was them to, I think all human beings are made equally. Okay, so if you choose anybody outside of Hindu, I'll welcome them. But remember one thing that your dad and I grew up in the same society, same culture, same religion, and look at how many disagreements we have in everyday basis. So when you go out of our culture, be ready to do all those. You have to think about it that if you're strong enough to build a marriage in these differences, go for it.
I would correct one thing, ask parents never to say that all religion are same. They are
All
not.
people are same. I said, not religion.
Again, people
people.
could be different, but only thing is you tell them that whatever you do, make sure you make fully informed decision.
Of course.
If it's interfaith marriage,
course.
open up my book and go through every page. And if you did it, you are safe.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
think one comment that I would make, Dilipji, is if I find Hindus to be a little naive, as you say, because we keep saying that if we accept everything, others should accept everything as well. It's like, I don't eat a tiger, the tiger shouldn't eat me, right? So I think, it's really important to understand that, the other religious folks are very stern in their way of thinking. So even if we are polite, accommodating, the other party is never the same. So that much awareness needs to be there for us, for our children and whoever involved.
Agree 100%, except I agree 99%, except you said that the other party will not be. Just use the word other party may not be.
May not be. Yeah.
Agree.
Because it's possible the other party, even though Muslim, could be the most progressive, open-minded. Again, these are all talking points. When you talk to your children, how you talk, how you articulate, that's important. If you assume that they are going to be bad, your children will really stop talking to you. So,
also, I have one question.
Yep.
I have one question. Somebody asked about conversion. There is no conversion in Hinduism, is it?
Exactly.
Because that's, yeah. it is only in Muslims and Christians. And one of the Dayananda Saraswati, I also always read about him and all that. And then one American who came, and he was so in India, and then he was so overwhelmed, and he was so he liked Hinduism so much, and he said, I want to be converted to Hinduism. And they said, why do you want to convert, first of all? No, I like it. And he said, so follow. And just, whatever the religion, whether you worship Jesus or Ishwar or Devi, it is all the same. But you don't have to convert. Just have faith and be a good man.
No, great point. But at the same token, the other party, if you are to keep on telling your children that Hinduism, there is no conversion, but it's only in Christianity and all that, that also could backfire, because I know one case where Hindu asked the Christian party to convert to Hinduism formally. Somehow these articles, this kind of thing shows up in New York Times, and then your child will show, look, mom, look, Hindu also are fanatic. My point being, when you talk to your children or when you're consulting somebody, you have to really learn how to be politically correct, use the word which they don't. So never try to make uplift Hinduism and put other down. As soon as they feel that way, it will backfire.
And in Arya Samaj, they are converting. I heard that Arya Samaj in India, they are converting.
Correct.
Like if anybody wants to be a Brahmin or a Hindu, they can convert.
No, I agree what you said.
What I heard, I don't know.
Like you truly said, Dr. Amin, like the problem is not with Christians or Jewish or Muslims. It's with us Hindus, because we don't have that conviction. Because if we don't stand for something, we can fall for anything, right? So, but in any relationship, whether it's parent and child or marriages, anything, equality, freedom, justice, all these things are, and love on top of all is very, very important. And we have to keep the communication open. We have an open mind and be accepting, right? So
actually my messages are for those who are youths, those who are atheists, not Hindu, many even anti-Hindu youths, even those one who never even outright don't want to come to Hindu mandates. They make nasty comments about Hindu pandits and way of, even for them, when you present them this equality, it will sit in their mind.
Of course, yeah.
So even though you did bad job in raising children till they fall in love relations with Abrahamic, and if you present it this way, it will make sense to them. Yeah, makes sense. Why should I get trapped into a certain way of thinking, particular box? I don't want to be boxed into it. See, some of those jargon talking word, equality, pluralism, don't get boxed into it, legal issues, divorce and child maternity custom. Think of certain jargon words, put it on, and when you are consulting, bring up those things in your discussions. And that's what they will make them not getting converted.
I want to say, Dilipji, thank you very much for this wonderful talk. It's very rare that it is often that we find people that are opinionated about their tradition and about other people in a way that's biased. But it's very rare for an opinion to be formed based on data, which is personal, it's not abstract. This is first-hand collected data, not anonymous, and it's been collected over the years. So this is fantastic work. It's amazing research, and it's a very compassionate piece of analysis that you presented to us. I wanted to just say 4 things from my perspective. One is that at the outer layer, it seems like a trivial choice, which is especially for Hindus, not because we're ill-informed, but because we don't understand the nature of transformation that's being asked for. And that is that there are forms of truth that Hinduism accepts. Now, what forms of truth does Hinduism accept? Every form of truth, every truth that is personal to you is acceptable. Ekam sat vipra bahudha vadanti. This is our belief from the way back, right? which is everyone's truth is acceptable. So
Mhm.
to us, this seems like a trivial non-question. If you want to be Islamic or Christian, what do we care? Because they're all equal paths. That's what we've been taught in the secular Indian context. It's not actually true. Because what you're doing is, imagine having infinite options and then having your infinity divided and giving you just one irreversible option. Now you have a gate. If you pass through this gate, there's no coming out of this gate. And you've limited yourself from the infinity of truths that are available to you to one truth that you cannot undo. So
Mm.
this isn't a trivial choice for someone to convert from a all-encompassing, all-believing system to one that says there is only one way, only one path through this one guide to this one way. And it's irreversible. Once you go into this motel, you can't come out of this motel.
You're talking about Roach Motel.
I don't know what you're talking about. so it's one way. And so it is a seemingly trivial question for Hindus because we don't understand this frame of mind that the degree of truths available to you can be reduced, because who can reduce the degree of truth, right? But there are systems, believe it or not, more prevalent than Hindu tradition, which reduce your truths to one truth, one set of rules. Drive on the left side of the road or the right side of the road, and or whatever, right? 10 rules or whatever it is that they believe in. Reduction in the rules of conduct and forms of truth, which is invariant over long periods of time, is anachronistic and out of sync for Hindus and for what we believe how the world works. But it is not that way for those faiths. Once you go into those systems, you cannot come out of those systems. And that's why this is an important discussion to have with the children. You, in your heart, you may still believe, and if you see the story of conversion across different places, not just to Islam or any other, the stories of these conversions are, initially you are attracted to the happy path, the friendly part of the other school, and culturally you might convert and it really makes no difference. Your next generation, a little more rigid. Your next generation is hardline. The generation after that is wearing short pants, long beards, and they're willing to strap a belt, right? The point is the degree of one-wayness only increases with generations and passing down. So it's a very difficult decision to overtake. Now, what's happening in the world, the second point I want to make is there is a massive de-churching of all traditions. There are people leaving their traditions, these Friday, Saturday, Sunday traditions. People are leaving those for moral reasons, ethical reasons, and economic reasons. There's a lot of money involved at belonging to a church or a mosque or a community because you pay in. There's a lot of money involved in it, and maybe you don't get value out of it. Maybe you want to get out of this system. The degree of de-churching is extreme, and it's a trend that is only on the rise, which should be something that you should also be aware of. There is rabid atheism, which is another form of Abrahamic thought, because again, the way atheism works in the West is it's an Abrahamic kind of atheism. It's my way of atheism or the highway, right? You're reducing your truths down to one type of truth. Even science is that way. So this isn't just about a conversation about what label you have. It's a conversation about what's your attitude towards truth, and does that get worse over time, that you need to be aware of. The third, so de-churching is an important thing to think about because a lot of people are leaving those traditions, but they don't know where to go. You can welcome them to your tradition because you're not asking for anything. You're not asking, all you're saying is be open to the truth as it unfolds into you, as it comes to you. We don't have many role models who can talk about it, but you can be, as CHTs, people who are willing to have that conversation about Hinduism. That when you join Hinduism, you give up nothing, you only get more ways to access truth, more processes, more systems, more love out of that. Now, third thing that I want to talk about is in the Hindu tradition, the temple is not the center of the community. But in these other traditions, the community is a very strong part of the life. And the reason this is important is the boy and girl might love each other forever, but their families don't want to be excommunicated. That it places tremendous pressures on the family. It isn't that they don't love your child. It is that they don't want to be kicked out of their community that they have been nurtured through all this time. And being excommunicated is a pressure that they'd rather not take up. So in many communities, in the South Asian context, people kill their children because they're married out of the community simply because they don't want to be excommunicated. They'd rather kill their child, right? And so you have to understand that this isn't just about the individual child's label. Their entire family is expecting to be kicked out and does not like it. The fourth thing is, especially the older parents are concerned about what happens to them in death and beyond. Hinduism, it's recycle, refresh, you're going to be reborn. We're not really concerned about infinite hell or infinite heaven. That's not a thing we think about. In other tradition, it's a binary, you toss a coin, you go to hell, right? And if you let your child marry outside your community, it may be that the coin is now loaded in favor of you going to infinite hell forever, right? And that, again, those two reasons, because of what happens to while you're living your community and what happens to you after you die, those are tremendous psychological barriers for the other family to accept a person from outside their faith without going through this one-way gate that says you have reduced your openness to truth to one single pathway and you can't undo it.
Great points, Gaurav. Now, I will add to it that, you talk about scientists. Yeah, I'm a scientist for 42 years. And actually for interfaith work, I did exactly the same thing, what I do in my scientific work, that I just collect the data. I talk to, before writing the books, I talk to 1,200 youths, and whatever decisions I'm talking about is based on that science. Now back to, you are a consultant now. So whatever Gaurav said, remember everything, that's very important. But at the same token, more selling point to convince the youth you are dealing with is along with Gaurav said, is add up the legal problem. That, you convert, but have you thought about legal problems? And to Hindus, remind them, you are getting baptized. It will cost you 12% of your gross income. Do you know that? They will run away right away from it. My point is a legal point, divorce, 12%, those will be more selling points, and equality. Any questions?
If nobody has any questions, maybe Dilipji, you can just quickly talk about the homework assignment.
Yes, please.
One question. Sorry.
Sure.
The thing is, my question is, you're saying that the church or mosque is something like a club, right? You are part of this club. You have these privileges, but you have to pay so much to maintain your membership. Is that right?
Well, I will not use the word club. Actually, I found it that we have a Balvihar at our mandir, and it's so primitive. Versus when I go to Jewish synagogue, they have a Balvihar. Their teachers are paid full salary, and they are on their payroll and getting medical benefits. Those who are teaching to Balvihar. Point is, they spend more and get more. We spend nothing and we get nothing. Point is, you want to get something. Unless you give 12% of your gross income, I mean, how are you going to gain it? I mean, that synagogues are so beautiful. So Hindus don't spend. Point is, we should not use that negative word, club. Especially
I'm not going to use
children.
it. It is sounding more like that.
Yeah, correct.
Sounds like it. I'm not going to use it. I'm not saying. But doesn't it sound like that? That has the same connotation, right? It's like a business thing for them. Whereas we don't do such things. We don't have such a.
I am a part of the interfaith group, and there is a Mormon lady. She is so proudly keep on saying we contribute 12%. They get so much. They feel proud about contributing. Meaning it's a give more, take more. Hindus, I think Hindus are stingy. They have to learn to spend money for Hindus.
I feel it's not like that. I feel that it is like this. You have to look at the point of view. My grandmother used to always tell me, that the farmer sows sows about 100, he throws 100 seeds in the land, right? When he's tilling the land, and only 10 of it will actually yield, in the sense that it'll become a plant and it'll actually yield. But the amount of yield that he gets from those 10 plants for every 100 seeds that he sows is so huge, so abundant, bountiful, that it takes care of the whole thing. So it's the same way in the Hinduism also, we don't force anybody to give. We don't force anybody, we don't ask them for things. Whoever gives. When that person who gives it, right, is so much that it suffices for everybody. I mean, yeah, maybe now it's become a little, as you rightly, I would agree with you, now they've become a little stingy and things like, but you have to see the circumstances that they went through. You have to see the complete history, right? If you look at all the circumstances that they've been subjugated and all those things, they've been stripped of all this thing, all their wealth and everything. Maybe that is what has led them to be like this today, right? Its reformation is happening. Slowly it will happen.
So I think interfaith marriage is definitely a tricky subject. When you talk to others as a consultant, you have to make sure that you are getting a consultant's help and think of you are in the situation, what you will do. And I'm sure each of you will be able to stop at least 10 conversions in your life. I hope, and you will go and teach others. I hope so.
I'm not sure if I'll be able to stop the conversion, sir, but I would definitely do my best to make them aware of their own faith, their own roots, and then leave it.
You know, Uttara, this, if you just be watchful, see, life is long. And if you are just being mindful, and if somebody has an interfaith relationship, slowly entering that relationship, become more friends, don't bring up interfaith issues. And slowly you gain the trust. And if you go there, I tell you, immensely, they will start open up and they will start, probably you approach it right way. And you will be able to. I have no doubt, Uttara, that you will be able to stop at least 10 conversions.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, about the assignment. No, this is the past assignment. But it's other one which
I have uploaded it, Dr. Amin, because it had 21 questions. So I have made a doc and I have uploaded it in the Moodle. So I think they should be able to find it.
Okay. So remind me.
Talk about it.
Some of you send me on Aditi document, and they read this document and super comments, super. All of you should read that Aditi document, assuming Aditi is your daughter. So those who have not read it, please read it. Second thing, that the New York Times articles which just came out yesterday, put it on Google, it will right away pop up. That's a very interesting example, how Muslims think. And the third point is those 21 points, that's a Q and answers. Please answer it. It's a paper based, but maybe you can highlight and written back to me at Interfaith Sadi as suggested. And based on that, I will give you more feedback. Take it yourself, not just as a student. Now you are an interfaith consultant. You are getting certified to be an interfaith consultant. Are you ready to be up to that level? And you will be stopping not more 10 conversions. You'll be stopping a lot more. So I have a high hope on each of you. Don't let yourself down, keep it up. And most importantly, hope not, who knows, in your own home, you will be able to fix problems. I hope not, but you never know.
Can I make a
Sure.
comment on a thesis about your home? My daughter married a Jewish guy, and they have a happily ever marriage. We had only Hindu wedding. And a month after the wedding, my son-in-law is a complete vegetarian, and he does home sarnavatu before he eats. Not because I did something about it. I think my daughter had enough understanding about Hinduism that helped. And that's why I'm gonna emphasize to all young parents, please put your energy to let them understand their roots are. And like Gauravji said, that let them be open to the multiple option instead of going to that narrow path.
Very true. That's exactly what Dayan and Saraswati ji told me. You install value right in your child. You be the Hindu first. That's what he told me. You be the Hindu first. And if you are, you don't have to worry nothing. But unfortunately, I was not Hindu, meaning not. And at later age, I woke up at late age. And so I did it wrong way, but at least glad to
Dilip
give it later on.
Ji, you turned around and you came around. So will your kids. I trust me, they will turn around. I had the same. I had this. I was like this. Once upon a time, I was very anti. I never believed in the Gita. I never did any of those things. But there was a turning point. I turned in such a manner. There was such a big U-turn that now nobody can shake me from my path. And I have a very good value. I mean, very good understanding. So I think your children will not go wrong. They will turn around. Trust me.
I'm not worrying. It's their life.
Yeah, they will be fine. You are right.
All our kids will. All the kids will be fine. At least coming from where we are coming, the kind of studying that we are doing, that will somehow rub off in them. It is just a matter of when it rubs off and when that transformation happens.
Only my point is they will come around only on short run in their instant love. They don't get trapped into doing what they did not meant to it. That's my whole objective. And that's why I need you to be consultant. I hope in a year or so, you will be ready to make other presentations. And I'll help you stepwise how to go about it. And talking about making presentations, Gaurangji, maybe I can market it. I have another website, forum, Gaurangji is part of it, and that is the Hindu Speakers Bureau. I want each of you, you are already certified to be a speaker, check it out the site, hinduspeakers.org. I want you to go out and speak in school and colleges. Gaurangji and myself will help you how to achieve that, or be an interspace speakers. Don't just sit with your knowledge under your cupboard or somewhere. Go share it.
Hindu, what is this you said? Just can you repeat that one more time?
Hinduspeakers.org.
Hinduspeakers.org, yeah. You see two familiar faces.
I'd love to, Dilip ji. That is something that is my passion. So
yeah, good.
All of you, we are not looking for speakers. We are looking for to be speakers.
Right.
As a matter of fact, one of this HCI person reached out to me and said, why you are not making presentation? He's part of the WhatsApp group. And finally, he called me up and he says, I'm nervous. I'm not ready to be a speaker. I said, no, you are ready. And now, point is, don't think if you think you are not a speaker, then you reach out to me or Gauravji.
So if nobody has any questions, maybe we can close the session. Thank you so much once again. We really appreciate it, Dr. Amin. And we really look forward to welcoming you back again next year also. Namaste.